Hello, and thanks for watching. In this video we're looking at XG2, or XG2 as it's sometimes written. So this is the second game in the Extreme G series, and this is a part of a series of videos I'm making about the Extreme G games. And I've done previous videos about the Wipeout series, which is a very similar series to this. So if you're interested in that, please have a look at those. But yeah, so here we go, Extreme G2. It was originally released here in the UK in 1998. And this is the Nintendo 64 box, and I'm pretty sure the art for this is the same regardless of the territory it was released in, but the box looks slightly different obviously. And it was also released this year, May 2017, on Steam on the PC. And there are a few differences which I'll mention when we get into the gameplay section. But yeah, so here's the box. And the Nintendo 64 was notorious for having these cardboard boxes which just fell apart. And the Super Nintendo was similar before that. And Extreme G2 is a particularly bad one, so it's quite rare to find a decent box version. Like, even this one's quite flimsy and falling apart. And that's because inside the Nintendo 64 cases, a lot of the games came with a little tray. But the way the Extreme G one was the cardboard was just shaped to hold the cartridge, as you can see here. So it was just folded over. And the box, because of that, was just really flimsy. So, there you go. Bit of an interesting fact about boxes there for you. I'm sure that's very exciting. But here we go. Here's the cartridge itself. And it's got the same sort of art on there. And on the box you can also see it's compatible with the memory card, or the memory pack, which goes in the back of the controller. In the slot there, and that's used for saving the game if you're not familiar with the Nintendo 64, and that just slots in there like that. And the same with the rumble pack. I mentioned this in the previous video about Extreme G1, but again, if you're not familiar with it, it's the first version of the rumble featuring controllers, and that just slotted in the back. It had its own batteries, and it functioned by vibrating the controller, which is standard in most controllers these days. But yeah, so it's available on Nintendo 64 and also Steam. So yeah, that's a brief look at the game itself, and we'll get into some gameplay and talk about it a bit more. So here we go, Extreme G2 on the Nintendo 64. And we're going to look at the Nintendo 64 version, we're not going to look at the Steam version. This is the original, this is what I want to showcase. I'll talk about the differences, but we are focusing on the N64 game. So there you go, it was developed by Probe, and it was published by Acclaim, just like the first game. And as we go into this short intro, you can see that there are actual riders in the bikes this time. In the first game it was much more of a virtual thing, but I think from this game onwards they wanted it to have a bit more personality, a bit more character, a bit like the F-Zero games with Captain Falcon, and the Wipeout games with their individual pilots of the ships. So they've introduced actual riders, and I think the riders are still in the games in Extreme G3 and XGRA as well. But there you go, there's a short intro, and then it'll just load up a demo of one of the tracks, but we'll skip that and get straight into the menus. So here we go, here's the main menu of Extreme G2, and the first thing to say about this game really is that it has new content, but is very similar to the first game in terms of options and what you're doing. So here we have Extreme Contest, and that's your league game. You race, you win, you unlock new stuff. That's the main mode in the game. Single player, and we've just got your basic time trials. Arcade mode is racing and fighting bots and scoring points that way instead of racing against other riders. And practice mode, where you just basically can pick a track, pick a bike and practice. Multiplayer. So the game does support up to 4 players, because the Nintendo 64 was great in that way with the 4 controller ports. And in here you've got your basic head-to-head, where it's just you, no computer AI. Battle Arena, which is, if you saw my previous video, it's the same as that. You pick an arena and you fight it out to the death. You are in kind of tank type things instead of bikes in this, and we'll have a brief look at that mode later on. And then Multiplayer Cup, which is like the Extreme Contest. You know, you progress, but you can do it with your friends, so that's cool. And you can split the screen in various ways and stuff, and we'll have a look at multiplayer probably at the end of the video. And then you've got your basic options where you can enter passwords to unlock stuff. Because like the first game, it is quite a difficult game, so it's quite nice to have that. You know, all your basic options here. And you can set your music, so you can have a default playlist, or you can pick certain tracks you want to listen to throughout the game. You can display the bike positions or the bike names, turn the weapons on or off, things like that. It's pretty cool, pretty thorough options there. But we're just going to look at the game, so we're going to go straight into Extreme Contest and have a look. So we're going to go into Atomic, the first one that's available here, and you unlock the others as you progress. And we're going to go on easy because it is a difficult game. I would always recommend people just going into this to start on easy and build up. Just like the first one, it's quite a difficult one. And here are the bikes, and you've got various bikes to choose from. Lots of different stats. There's a couple of bikes you can unlock as well, and you can press one of the yellow C buttons and bring up the stats themselves. That one's pretty well balanced, so we'll play as that one. And also you can press the R button and bring up the customize menu, change your name, stuff like that, the controls if you want to. So it's quite cool for customization, and if you want to change anything to make it a bit more suitable for you. You can use the other C buttons to spin the bikes around and look at them a little bit. It's quite cool, and the characters are there, giving it that bit more personality. But yeah, so we'll pick that one and get straight into it. So Aquanaur, the harbour, finished 4th to qualify. Let's see if we can do that. So yeah, if you're not familiar with the Extreme G games, this is what it looks like. Futuristic racing bikes on the track. And as we get going, you can see the basic layout of the HUD there. You've got your positions and your lap counter in the top left. You've got nitros below that, and you have 3 of those. In time trial you have 1 per lap, so use them wisely. And you activate your nitro, it gives you a speed boost like this. So below that you've got your shields and your weapon bar. As each individual bike has a weapon, as I'll fire it now, you can see that firing off. And you can damage the opposition, slow them down. They can damage you, slow you down. Top right you've got the lap counter, timer sorry. Below that you've got a display that shows where the bikes are on the track. And below that you've got your speedometer. So yeah, very similar to the first game in its look. Something that will immediately stand out is the frame rate. And it definitely suffers from slowdown when there's a lot happening on screen, which is unfortunate. If you play in time trial mode, or if you're out front and there's nothing going on around you, the game runs very smoothly, but unfortunately it does suffer from some slowdown. It's the kind of thing where if you play the game quite a bit, you will probably not really notice it anymore. And for me personally, I missed this game when it came out. I played Extreme G1, and then I think I got F-Zero X, which actually came out just before Extreme G2. So I probably wasn't the only one who did that. And unfortunately I think Extreme G2 suffered a little bit in the market because of F-Zero X beating it to the system. But yeah, so I missed this at release, and I went back to it a few years later. I think I rented it or borrowed it off a friend or something. And I've gone the wrong way there. I'll talk about that in a moment as well. But yeah, so going back to it, it's a bit difficult as the first game in the series runs so smoothly, and F-Zero X runs very smooth as well. So the frame rate issue, it is a shame. But yeah, so I mentioned I'd talk about that wrong way there. Something that happens in this game a lot is if you clip the sides or bump into something, you will get thrown around facing the wrong way. It's not a game break or anything, it's just something I've noticed. It happens a bit more often than it does in other games. You've just got to be a better racer, I suppose. It's not really a negative on the game, I'd say. But yeah, you can see I'm picking up weapons as we go. So each bike has a preset weapon, which I'll fire off here like this with the A button. And you can charge that up as well and fire it off. And you're also collecting weapons off the track, very similar to the Wipeout series or Mario Kart, where you're collecting a weapon. So there we go. Got the mortar weapon there, and there are mortars and rockets and things like that. Various weapons, very similar to the first game, the weapon set. Let's use a nitro and see if we can catch up a bit here. But yeah, track design in the game, it's quite varied, but maybe not as smooth flowing as the original, I'd say. There were some sharp bends here and there, and second place, that's okay. We only needed 4th to qualify. But yeah, track design, pretty solid. Good mix of environments. And we'll go on to the next track and have a look at that one. So here we go, 4th to qualify again. And you can see at the bottom there, there's the 4 symbols. So there are 4 tracks in this part of the tournament. So here we go. I think you might be able to get a boost start there, I'm not sure. I've not been able to do it just yet. So you do have a tight turn button as well to assist you with turning, very similar to the Wipeout and F-Zero games, as I say, in that regard. And yeah, so the game, it was pretty positively received when it originally came out. It scored in the 7 out of 10 sort of range. There's the wrong way thing again. Bit of a shame that keeps cropping up. But yeah, it was pretty well received. I think back in the day, yeah, it's a shame it came out just after F-Zero X, because that was so well done, and so many people were impressed by the speed and the amount of things that are going on the track with no slowdown. But yeah, this is still a pretty good release. I'd definitely agree with 7 out of 10. I think it's good, but it has a couple of issues. Nothing game breaking, like I say. And yeah, you can see yourself, this track's very different to the design of the first one. But yeah, still fun. And I mentioned it's available on Steam, so Throwback Entertainment, who have the rights for Extreme G, have put the game out on Steam. And from what I understand, it's okay. It's a pretty good release. It's got some issues if you try and run it at higher resolutions. I just fell off the track there, but you can see it instantly respawns you, which is quite cool. So yeah, the Steam release, it's pretty solid. It's got a different soundtrack, and it's been retextured a little bit. So if you're a nostalgic fan of these games, it's different. That's basically what I want to tell you, is that it does run. You can't really run it at high resolution without issues, and it's a bit different. So if you're a nostalgic fan, you probably want to stick with the original release that we're looking at today. So you might have noticed just then I brought up a cool little feature in this game. If I press the C up button, you can see I look behind the bike, and it brings up a small window at the bottom of the screen there, showing you where you're going. It's a bit strange at first, but it's quite cool. And if I use the D-pad, I can change the views. So we can go further out from the bike, and we can also go into a first-person view like this. There's quite a few. I think there's maybe about 5 viewpoints there. I always play these kind of games with the exterior view though. I find it quite difficult with the interior view going at this speed. So we're just going to go into single player here and have a look at the arcade mode, and that's the mode where you fight against the bots instead of racing against the riders. And I don't think I mentioned before, but here you can see there's 12 different track environments, and inside each environment there are multiple variations of the tracks. So you've got quite a lot of content track wise in the game, and we're just going to pick one of the different bikes here, and it'll display your record on the screen there. That one's not a particularly high record because I'm not a big fan of this mode. We'll get into it, and you can see you're just racing along, fighting against the bots using your primary weapon on your bike, that one there. And your score is at the top of the screen there. And I find it quite difficult to keep on the track while fighting these. And obviously, you know, you play it, you get better at it, but it's quite difficult, and I tend to enjoy the races a bit more than the combat side of things. Oh, fell off the track. Never a good thing. But yeah, there you go. You sort of get the gist of what's going on here. You're racing along and just fighting against these little bot things. It's very similar to the mode in the first game, like this. Okay, we're just going to have a quick look at multiplayer. I don't have anyone with me to properly showcase the multiplayer, but I still want to show at least how it looks, so you get a brief idea of what's going on with it. So if we go in here, and we'll just go into head-to-head first, so you can get a basic idea of the multiplayer. And just pick any track. So you press start on however many controllers you want to have in the game. So if we go with 2, you can see the screen split there. And you can use the L button to reposition how you want the screen split, horizontal or vertical. And I only have 2 controllers, but I'm going to do a little trick here where I put the second controller in the 3rd slot. And there we go. Through that little trickery we can see what it looks like with 3 players. And the cool thing is, with the L button you can also reposition how the screen is split for 3 players. So one person can always have a larger portion of the screen, and yeah, it's pretty cool the way you can mix up the variation here. But I don't think we can go into the actual game with 3, so we're going to have to drop one out. And I'll switch the controls back, and we'll look at a vertical split here first in the basic head-to-head. So there we go. And I'm just going to briefly show you what this looks like. The game runs pretty iffy with the frame rate issues in single player, so you can imagine it does cross over to multiplayer, unfortunately. But yeah, you know, this is just a basic idea of what this looks like. That's how the horizontal split looks, and I'll just quickly cut across to some horizontal split, and then we'll look at the battle mode. So here we go, this is just a quick look at what the vertical split looks like. I always think vertical works better with racing games. You can see more of the track ahead, it just makes much more sense. And it's the same with XG2. Works well. I think it plays smoother in this mode, in head-to-head, because it's not trying to process as much detail. As I mentioned, the game does unfortunately suffer from those frame rate issues. But yeah, that's a quick look at that. Right, so we're just going to go into the multiplayer and have a look at the battle arena mode. And you can see here there's the 6 different environments to choose from. 6 different arenas, small arenas to battle in, unlike the actual race tracks from the other portion of the game. And we'll just go in here. And if I press start on the controllers, you can see we're in these tanks instead of the bikes. And we'll play with vertical split. There we go. So yeah, here we go, little tank, and you're in this arena, and you basically have to find each other, defeat each other. You've got the weapons from the single player game, and your standard weapon that you would have on a bike as well. But you're just in this giant arena. Bit of a different kind of mode for the game. And if I can find the other player, I can just show you how this looks. Here we go. And yeah, you just fight and use the various weapons from the game to defeat each other. Different way of playing the game. It's not really something I'm interested in. I like the racing aspect of the game. But yeah, it's cool, it's nice that it's there. It was in the first game. It'd probably be a bit weird if they took out a feature rather than adding to the game. So yeah, it's nice that it's there. It's something I've never really played with multiplayer. But I can imagine if you have the 4 players playing this, it's probably quite fun. So yeah, that's a quick look at that. Okay, so here we are, we're just doing a time trial on one of the tracks. Just for some final thoughts really, it's a pretty good sequel to the original. I think the original, for me personally, is slightly better. It plays smoother, and a lot of that might be to do with the fact that I missed this when it initially came out. I don't have the nostalgic feeling for it. But it's a pretty good sequel. It's not broken in any way. It plays okay. And yeah, I mean, check it out. It's widely available. It's not expensive to pick up this game. I've seen it in shops. I've seen it on eBay a lot. And yeah, I'd recommend at least giving it a go, especially if you're into the futuristic racing games. So yeah, that's been a look at Extreme G2, and we will move on to Extreme G3 very soon. Thank you for watching.